Cellular systems have came a long way in the past few decades. When we look what we are today and that cellular systems are widespread everywhere, it's easy to forget how quickly they evolved and all this journey. Let's understand a bit of this evolution of cellular systems. We start talking about the first generation of cellular system which brought the service of mobile telephony. You need to understand that this was truly revolutionary. So before that, you could only make calls if you were on a fixed location. So for example, at your office or at home. But if you were on movement, it would not be possible to make a call. So it was really groundbreaking that with the introduction of 1G, you could make calls on the movement. So time, for example, that you were in your car could now be used for important things like a business call. But 1G had many drawbacks, and they became clear quite quickly. First of all, there was not enough capacity, the system was expensive, and the quality could degrade quite quickly. There was also no security, and if you were a traveler, you would very quickly realize that your mobile phone would only work in your country, not in other countries. So, with all these issues of 1G, then basically we started to think about the second generation of mobile systems. And the second generation brought digital telephony, and this was a quantum leap. So, with digital technology, then all these problems which were there in the first generation, they had a solution. So you could actually make roaming so that you could move from one country to the other and use the same phone. That was especially true in Europe with GSM, which is a 2G system that's still used until today, which is definitely telling about the quality of this system. With digital technology, it was also possible to do things like encryption, to have more capacity, to have better quality, and so on. So 2G was really where cellular systems got widespread, but we were still having only voice services. At this time, the fixed internet was becoming more and more popular, so it was quite clear that the next step that should be taken was towards 3G with the use of mobile data. And this usage of mobile data then was bringing the internet to your pocket. But at that time, those data rates were still very, very small. And only with the evolution of 3G and then with the advent of 4G, then we could really experience mobile broadband as we know today. 4G was really introduced at the more or less at the same time where smartphones start to get widespread. And that's basically then where we are today. Most usage of data out there, it's still today in 4G. And what 5G brings new to the picture? So 5G brings this mobile broadband to the next level. That's the so-called enhanced mobile broadband. But 5G is also thought to do much more than that. 5G was thought actually to serve to many different industries. Those are called verticals in the context of 5G. 5G was also thought to help on IoT, so the Internet of Things, and the Industry 4.0, which is the next level of automation on the industry. While each generation of cellular system has really been a big milestone and it was able to bring something like really new compared to the previous generation, we need to understand that cellular systems they evolve not only from one generation to the next, but they also evolve continuously. In fact, we need to understand the generation of cellular system as a platform which evolves over time. The best example is 2G. The 2G that we still have today on the field, it's so much better than the 2G which was initially defined. Let's understand how this has evolved. So at some point we had the initial 2G standardization, the initial 2G deployments. And in fact in 2G we had many different technologies, but let's think a bit about the GSM, the one which still exists today. GSM has gone through certain evolution cycles with releases. At the time it was standardized by ETSI, not still by 3GPP. And at some point, like people start to realize, well, the internet is a big thing, mobile communication, cellular networks, it's a big thing. And people were already thinking about 3G, but 2G networks were already there. So it make a lot of sense to make a kind of preview of this new generation of cellular networks which can connect to the internet but using the already existing 2G platform. And that was exactly the case with technologies which became known as 2.5G and 2.75G. GPRS, the General Packet Radio Services, which introduced the connectivity to the internet, and Edge, which brought much better data rates for this GSM based internet connectivity. Oh, after that, 2G really went into a kind of maintenance phase, and then 3G was out. So, like the initial deployments has started to really reach the market more or less at the same time that Edge start to get more widespread. And in fact, those networks were complementary. So like you could not have 3G everywhere where you already have 2G. So like you could only provide 3G services to the internet by also using the 2G platform to complement those services. In the same way, then 3G went through some evolution cycle, and at some point it became clear that we need larger data rates, that we need a broadband, which was like the big thing in 4G. But we could not wait for 4G to have that. We could bring the improvements and the technological advancements already to the existing 3G platform. And that's what happened with HSPA, so high speed packet access, first in the downlink, then in the uplink. We had more and more higher data rates, and that was when really like 3G took off, and it really became more of the initial vision of the internet connectivity in the mobile. Like the experience became better, became more like the internet that you were used to have at home. And 4G, the same thing. At some point, we had the initial standardization, the initial deployments. Some it went through evolution cycles, and something new started to happen more or less at this time. That the 2G and 3G went more, let's say, in a kind of phase out, so that uh, it's giving more and more space like for the new technologies. And also with 4G, without making a lot of calling a lot of attention, then we have certain technologies which came like really late into the 4G cycle, which are really, let's say, pointing the direction for 5G. Some examples are LTA Pro with the more capabilities to doing more massive MIMO, to doing higher data rates. CUPS, which is basically like bringing control user plane separation, something important in the core, important for virtualization. CV2X, it became just before basically the 5G, but like you could not really wait until having 5G because that was something that was really wanted to be out there. So like all of those are still based on this 4G LTE platform, and but in a certain way really complementing 5G when 5G really actually came out. So that's basically like this continuous evolution of cellular networks. And we need to understand also that it's not only because we want the services more, but the technology advances not just from one decade to the next, but the technology advances continuously and we learn new things. And as we deploy, we also understand things that we can make better than they were originally planned in this initial network deployments. And this continuous evolution of cellular networks, it's pretty much related to the cycles of development of the technology with the 3GPP releases. So 3GPP, the third generation partnership project, it's a standards development organization which was formed to standardize 3G, but since then also for 4G and 5G, it has become the leading organization to develop standards for the mobile communication. And basically 3GPP works with cycles, which are called releases, and basically every 18 to 24 months you have a new release, which you can think as a set of new features, so new technological components, and which marks together something that can be used for the implementation of networks, of mobiles, to develop services, to be able to test the interoperability of things between these components. And what we can see actually is that the first release, including 5G NR, so 5G new radio, was actually release 15. And since then, we have new releases 16, 17, and 18. And in each of those releases, we have the new features which expands the capabilities of 5G NR. And even though everything which comes after the first release, it's actually optional for implementation, we need to understand actually that there is a great degree of backward compatibility. So everything which is defined before, so if you have a network, for example, a network on release 17 and a mobile on release 15, they still should be able to be interoperable.